Every single book I read in July, 8 books, 2,744 pages. Yes, I counted. I'm going to share these with you from best, my favorites of the month, to worst. So books you should totally buy, totally add to your list, and books that you should probably skip. But let's start with the good things. Good things first, yeah? Okay, cool. So first up is The Extraordinary Life of Sam Hell. Now, this is about a boy who is born with blood red eyes, and his mother is determined that it's like an act of God, and she always says, because it's God will, almost like a parent saying, because I said so, right? So there's a lot of themes of faith in this book, but it's not overtly Christian. I'm not Christian, but it's not like forcing it down your throat or anything, but it's just a general faith in anything, really, just faith in your life, I would say. So that's sort of a theme throughout this book, is faith in yourself, faith in the world around you and the people around you, and building a life for yourself. And it's so much more than I expected, because when I read the description, it was just like a boy with blood red eyes. He's a misfit. He becomes friends with a few other misfits, and they sort of go through their lives together into adulthood, and you get to see both their adolescence and their adulthood. I didn't expect it to be as amazing as it was, but seriously, fantastic. I totally cried. I'm not gonna lie to you about it. I mean, don't spread that around. You know, I do have a rep to protect, but this book is so much more than I expected. I don't think it gets enough attention. So read this, please, and have some tissues ready, because you won't be able to help it. So Extraordinary Life of Sam Hell by Robert Dugoni. I did listen to the audiobook. It was fantastic. It's read by the author, I believe. And actually, I was so into it, and my fiance heard me listening to this, and he was so hooked by it that he started reading it too. So go ahead and check this one out. I don't think you're gonna regret it. Another truly fantastic read. I cannot decide which one is my favorite between this and The Extraordinary Life of Sam Hell. I really can't. Both were absolutely fantastic in very different ways. This one is The Color of B. Larkham's Murder. It is really perfectly researched. It's witty. It's surprisingly funny, but it does tackle some really serious and some heavy subjects. It surrounds a really unique young man called Jasper, who's in his adolescence, and he's autistic, and he also has a unique condition where whenever he hears sound, he sees it as color. This is a real disorder called synesthesia. I hope I'm saying it right, but she did her research. She has a whole index in the back, and that's something I really admire and really appreciate, because I think if you're going to be writing about these topics, you should definitely dive into your research, and Sarah Harris absolutely did that, and she did it fantastically. There's moments when I was reading this where I would laugh out loud, because you kind of can't help but fall in love with Jasper, even though he's not exactly lovable. He's kind of cranky. He's in his own head, of course, and he's brutally honest and kind of accidentally offends people. So you kind of can't help but love him for his faults, or because of his faults, and you just get really invested. So there were moments where I was laughing out loud, but because I loved him so much and I was like really falling into his world and his perspectives, later on when things get more serious, I was like yelling out loud to the characters because I wanted them to behave one way or another. So essentially, Jasper witnesses a murder, but because he is autistic, he has synesthesia, and he has a face recognition disorder, meaning he doesn't recognize anyone by their face, not even his own father. So of course that makes things a little tricky for the police when they're trying to figure out what happened. The woman who was murdered was his new neighbor. She's sort of siren-like and mysterious, and Jasper is, throughout this novel, trying to come to terms with what really happened that night and what his involvement really was. Absolutely fantastic, perfectly done. I don't think this gets enough attention either, so please, for the love of all things bookish, check these two out, because they are, I loved them. All right, this one I also really enjoyed. It was such a good month for me. I feel like if I get 2 or 3 books that I really enjoy, that I'm happy, and I don't even care about the lame ones that are coming later on. But The Boy at the Keyhole, it's neo-Gothic, Victorian-esque, but it is a little bit more modern, which is interesting. But basically, there is a boy on this remote countryside estate. It was once grand, and now it's sort of in disarray. There's been a lot of money problems. And this little boy, it's from his perspective, his mother just up and leaves. and he's told that she's taking care of business in America, trying to make the family money. But he doesn't quite believe it. He's under the care only of the housekeeper, and the housekeeper is struggling with maintaining his energy and running the expenses of the house because she's sort of left to deal with this on her own. So we're kind of forced as the reader to figure out what's really going on. Did his mom really leave to America? Is she really going to take care of business? But why would she leave without saying goodbye to her son? Why is she not in contact with them? Did something more sinister happen? So it's really psychological, more so than I expected. I really, really enjoyed it. It's a really totally approachable, really short book. And I just like that vibe. So if you like that sort of neo-Gothic, Victorian era vibes, I don't know another word to use, then this might be a really fun one for you. I really enjoyed it. Definitely has a psychological edge, definitely character driven. So check it out. Plus I really like this cover. I don't know if you can really appreciate it on video, but it's really well done. All right, I know it's taken me years to jump on this train, but I finally read Where'd You Go, Bernadette this month. I've had it for years, and I was just like, you know what? Let's do it. So I grabbed it. It's so witty, it's so funny, it's so unique, and I think it's like an ode to unique, weird people, which I love. It's so good. It's basically a mother and daughter and what happens when everything centers around this trip they're planning to Antarctica, which is a very weird travel destination, but ends up being really cool. But it's really more about the characters and about the mother who was once this great architect, and for some reason now she's moved to a new place and she's not really quite herself anymore. So we're kind of going on this journey of discovery. It's more than you think it'll be. So just by the description, it doesn't sound that exciting. Like if I saw this on a shelf, I probably wouldn't pick it up from the back cover, but I've just heard this book talked about so much that I saw it at a library book sale once and bought it, and that's how we got here. So I think it's way more than the back cover describes, and more than I can even say without really like ruining it, if that makes sense. But it's really funny. The writing structure is interesting in that there's not even chapters. There's no chapters at all. There's parts, but everything else is just sort of a compilation of documents. So it's emails, flyers, letters, things like that. So it's not a traditional writing style, and I think that can go good or it can go bad. And I think in this one it went really well, because I think when there's no chapters as a reader, you can kind of get exhausted, you know what I mean? Where it's like a wall of text and you're like, when can I close this book and take a break? Or you don't get that same feeling of like I accomplished something at the end of a chapter. But I didn't run into that at all with this book. Something about the way that it's paced is really well done so that you don't even really notice. You just want to keep reading. And who doesn't want that in a book? So definitely check this one out if you haven't already. I'm totally late to the train on this one. Okay, I just want to mention these really quick because I did do 2 rereads this month, and that's not something I usually do, but I don't know, I was feeling nostalgic, I wanted something comforting, and so I ended up rereading both Matilda and The Two Towers. So obviously I'm gonna rate these highly every single time, and I'm gonna recommend them both to you without going into too much detail because come on, you know what's up. I will say though that if you haven't read Lord of the Rings, do it on audiobook because I could not read these without the audiobook. I'm not gonna lie to you. It can be really slow at times. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. But it's so seminal and it's so fantastic. Like once you are into Lord of the Rings, you will be into it, okay? So if you struggle with like getting into the first book, just do the audiobook. It's fine. It's not cheating, I promise. And it's like this old British man reading it to you, and it's like the best thing ever. Matilda, on the other hand, is like my role model. She's the best ever. I love her. And if you haven't read Matilda and you just need yourself a little Roald Dahl moment, here you go. Okay, so those are all the books that I really enjoyed that I would totally say, go buy it. If you don't buy it or you don't put it on your shelf, you're crazy. You're a crazy person. I loved all of them. But now we're gonna get into the last 2 books, which were books that I didn't really like. So, and it actually got really dark outside as I said that. It's almost as if the world knows that we're getting more depressing now. So the first of those is The Cabin at the End of the World. So this is by Paul Tremblay. He wrote A Head Full of Ghosts, which I did not read in all fairness, but people really loved. So when the opportunity came to read this one, I was like, yes, but I have a few problems with this. It was fine. I would say borrow it instead of buy it. But it is interesting, but I feel like the description kind of makes this sound like a post-apocalyptic hero adventure story, and it's not that at all. It couldn't be further from that. It's essentially like a modern day Abraham and Isaac where you're sort of forced to choose, if that makes sense. It's about God versus man, fate versus choice, life versus death. It's much more like big picture prophetic than an action adventure post-apocalyptic novel. So I don't like that it's almost marketed that way, because I think when you go in with the wrong expectation, it can totally screw up a book for you. But it is fine. The writing style took me a minute to get used to, but once you do, it's fine. But again, I just like wasn't super in love with it. It is short, but I don't know. It just might not be my flavor of horror, if that makes sense. So borrow it if you're curious, and then you can buy it if you really like it. But I think it's more of like a middle of the road book that maybe you shouldn't spend your money on. All right, the last one is Our House, and this is a book that I would say skip it. You don't need to waste your time, girl, okay? So basically, you know that I love mystery thrillers. I'm like obsessed with them, and so maybe that makes me a little more nitpicky, or I don't know, aware, I guess, because I read so many of them. But I feel like this one, the concept is fantastic. Like, I say this occasionally with reviews, like if a concept alone could carry a book, then this is one of those that you would be like, oh, it was perfect. But unfortunately, a concept isn't everything. It's pretty much all in execution, and that's what I had a problem with this. So it is a mystery thriller, but the problem is that there's no mystery at all. There's dual perspectives, so everything is kind of told to you pretty quickly. So you don't really need to know what's going on to reach the end, because you already know. So they sort of tell you something twice, they tell it from both characters, and then they just go into detail on that, which isn't very interesting when you're a mystery reader. You know what I'm saying? Like there was nothing propelling me forward, basically. I also felt like the characters were really stereotypical, which is just like annoying to me. Like, I'm kind of over it. Like the wife was like a suburban mom, like stereotypical, like she didn't have a life. Do you know? It's just like, aren't we beyond this now? Like, there's nothing wrong with being an at-home mother at all, but when you paint people, your characters like that flat, it just kind of annoys me. And the same for the husband, who was just like a serial cheater, misogynist, jerk. And that's sort of like all he was. And it's not realistic. It's not interesting. There's no layers. And I'm just kind of over it. I was kind of over it 100 pages in, but at that point, I just kept going. Like, I might have DNF'd this if I wasn't already so far in, because at that point I just felt like I was wasting my time. So I just kept going. Honestly, I'm not even gonna I did a full review on my blog if you want to listen to me complain a little bit more, but it's not worth your time. Just skip it. Okay? I'm sorry. That's just how I feel inside my soul. Okay? All right, so that is my July wrap up. 8 books, 2,477 pages. Pretty proud of myself, but I do want to be reading more. It's just that I'm busy, y'all. I'm planning for a wedding. I'm running a business. I'm just like losing my mind, okay? So I hardly exist anymore outside of task lists. So I don't feel too bad. I might have to lower my Goodreads challenge goal, and that's totally fine. Sometimes you just have to readjust, you know? So I think that's where we're at right now. I'm not giving up on that reading goal yet, but we'll see. We only have like 4 months left in the year, which is crazy. Am I right? So let me know if there was a book from July that really stood out to you. I'd love to know which one it was. You enable me, I enable you. And that's how this whole book blogging thing works. All right, thanks for watching. Do me a favor and give this video a big thumbs up if you liked it. Leave me a comment below because I love talking to you. And if you haven't already, go ahead and hit that subscribe button because we should hang out, you know? All right, guys, thanks for watching and I'll see you next time.